Hello and welcome to the Today's Money Masters. I'm your host, Jean-Paul Manu. The Today's Money Masters competition comprises 3 professional investors and a novice, each provided with $500,000 to invest. The participants have invested in stocks, bonds, and collective investment schemes, and they're sharing their strategies over this one-year period. At the end of the period, the top portfolio manager will be declared. So let's continue with the masters on this very exciting journey. Welcome back. On today's program, we are joined by Stephen Gooden, a past master and president of the Jamaica Securities Dealers Association. Hi, Stephen. How are you?
I'm great. You?
Good. I'm fine. Thank you. Nice to see you. Nice to have you on the
same
program.
here.
Stephen, you are a past master, as I
That's
just
correct.
said, Chief Executive Officer of NCB Capital Markets Limited, and importantly for us, President of the Jamaica Securities Dealers Association.
Right.
Can you give us just a brief explanation of what that body does?
Right. So the Securities Dealers Association is pretty much the lobby group for securities dealers across Jamaica.
Okay.
By securities dealers, we're referring to wealth management firms, investment banking firms, so your usual names, NCB Capital Markets, JMB.
Our sponsors
Our
mostly.
sponsors
Okay.
and so on. Those firms that provide wealth management and investment banking services to our clients are typically securities dealers licensed by the Financial Services Commission.
Okay.
So we are pretty much that association that lobbies on behalf of that group.
Okay, fine. So as president of that organization now, what are your thoughts on how the industry is managing with our present threats from the
So
coronavirus?
we are seeing a significant fall off in the value of securities. I mean, you look at the bond market, prices have fallen off significantly. The stock market has fallen off significantly. If you just look at the movement of the index, the stock market itself has shed a lot of value. However, I'm of the view that given the crisis itself, I do believe that the stakeholders are, doing its best to just kind of manage as we go through. Right. So not the best of times, but I do believe as an industry, we are being pretty proactive in managing the situation.
Okay. How so? Because the market has been, our local market has been sort of on a decline since about August of last year.
Yeah. Well, a combination of things. So you would have seen some, during the latter part of last year, you'd have seen what I call some market correction taking place, because the market has gone up significantly in recent times. And going into the Trans-Jamaica IPO, you'd have seen investors basically building liquidity to participate.
Okay.
Right. So you'd have seen some, declines during the latter part, but what you're seeing now is really a function of what is happening globally.
Of this corona
thing.
thing.
The corona, yeah.
Okay. What would you look for as a signal of recovery to normality? Because I mean, hopefully, we're still keeping our numbers low here.
Right.
And we've heard recently that China is doing much better on their end. It's the hardest hit countries now are Italy and the United States. We are not doing so badly, knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood.
What do you think is going to be a signal of recovery?
So the truth is, we're going into the unknown.
Right.
The last time we have had a global pandemic of this nature was probably 100 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of us would have been around, right? But, with these things, eventually it tapers off.
It does, right.
The approach of flattening the curve will result in it taking some time to come out of the system. I'm hoping that we are in a position to adequately protect our borders while it kind of works itself out among the parties that we do a lot of business with and trade with and travel with. But at the end of the day, we are going into the unknown. But what is certain, though, is that markets recover. This is not the first crisis. It's not the second, and it won't be the last. Right? The markets will recover. That's one. Two, during a crisis, there are always buying opportunities, right? And thirdly, typically after a crisis, economies, markets tend to be more resilient than before.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So although we are going through rough times now, I'm fairly optimistic.
Okay. You mentioned a moment ago, before we take a break,
Right.
you mentioned a moment ago that the Securities Dealers Association is playing their part in
Right.
this.
Right.
What are you guys doing?
Well, I mean, so, you know, we have daily conversations with our members. So as a matter of fact, last night we were on a call up until 9 p.m., just kind of talking through the issues. We have been actively engaging the various regulators, stakeholders in the system. We have almost daily calls with the central bank, with the Financial Services Commission, and they have been fairly receptive and open. So what I say, and it goes back to the point that I made earlier on, the stakeholders have been fairly proactive, and there are a number of measures that have been put in place. During a crisis, you know, one thing that is very important is liquidity. You know, there needs to be ample liquidity in the marketplace.
And by liquidity, I just want you to break that down, meaning cash.
The ability to trade securities.
Right, okay.
Right, access to cash. Right, so liquidity is very important, and the ability to move that liquidity around from those that have to those that are in need. In need is very important. Right. And what you tend to find is that there's some freezing up of the market during a crisis situation. So the central bank has been very proactive in that regard. They have tweaked their credit lines to banks to ensure that there's liquidity. Through those banks, securities dealers will have access to lines if needed. They have also put in place a window whereby securities dealers and banks can actually sell government of securities, government of Jamaica securities to the central bank for liquidity. And there's also a window in place whereby the central bank will sit in the middle between institutions if they want to lend to each other. During crisis, there may be some concerns around lending funds. The central bank has said, okay, if there's a concern between, if party A has a concern lending money to party B, they will sit in the middle and take on that risk. And there are other measures that are being looked at. The situation is fluid, but what I can say, and I appreciate about the central bank and the Financial Services Commission, is that there's active dialogue. And I would say for the past few days, we pretty much communicate every day.
Nice. I'm happy to hear that, because you're not on vacation.
No, we're not on vacation. The work continues.
Right. The world is still turning.
Yeah, the world
we'll
is
have
still
more
turning.
with Stephen Gooden after this break.